And right under comparators, we've got our math functions. So let's expand that. And was I kidding? I said that there were a lot of these, and look, guess what? There are a lot. Calculate. That one's going to be very useful because that one can run entire equations for us, all right? Add, subtract, multiply, divide, modulus, negative, increment, decrement, absolute. I'm not going to read all of these. You either know what all of these are or you don't know what all of these are. If you don't know what all of these are, take a college algebra class, okay? They'll teach you what all of these are. And if you don't know what they are, chances are you're not going to be using them anyway. So if you don't know what they are, great. You're not going to need them anyway. Let's go through a few of these. I cleaned out our program. We had all that, comparator and counter in there. I just selected something on the screen, hit Control A, right-clicked on something and hit delete, and boom, it just wiped out that whole program block for me. Very cool. So let's jump in and take a look at some of these. We'll start with the real basic. We'll start with our add, okay? So add is set to auto data type. It's going to try to figure out what data type we're using, and you see it can handle a lot of different stuff. I'm just going to set that at integer because I really just want to add some basic integers right now. And let's go ahead and set that up with our famous val1 and val2 that we were using before because they served us so well the last time. Now it just wants a place to store the value. And I don't know, how about val3? That sounds pretty good, doesn't it? And define the tag, local temp, int. We're not going to be modifying that directly, so we'll just go ahead and leave it as local temp. Hit define. Good. Just like that, we've got ourselves an add block. And I'm going to give us one more thing to play with, and that's going to be a calculate block. So I'm going to pull that down here. So here where it says this out colon equals and it's got our question marks, that is where we actually define what our function or what our equation is going to be that we're calculating here. So you can see it gives kind of an example of what one of these formulas or equations is going to look like, and it gives you some different operators that you can use as far as notation for things like absolute value and division and things like that. Let me show you something strange about this. When you say, okay, maybe I want to add like 5 plus 3, so you hit 5 plus 3, and look at this. Only the inputs of the instruction are permitted to be operands. Tags or constants are not permitted. So here we cannot use constants. We have these two values here, so we can define our val1, put it on that input. We can put our val2 here, which means it'll let us use that in this blocks. And look right here, you see how we've got this little yellow splat icon? That's to insert more inputs. So if I wanted to, I can go ahead and put val3 in here, or I could define something else. So, I can put more values in there. So, now let's go ahead and, define an equation. I'll say it's going to be n1 times n2 minus n3. How does that sound? And hit OK. So that equation has to be in terms of these operands right here. I can't use val1 or val3. I can't use like a 10 or 100. I can only use these values right here. Now what I can do, I can type a 100 right there on N4, and then I can come back in here and say like plus N4. Okay, so it's not like you can't use constant values at all. You just have to define them there on the outside. The last piece we have to setting up this calculate instruction is we need a place to store the output. So I'll go ahead and give us a val4 for that. Define it, and that'll be another local temp. Okay. So now we know how to set up an add and a calculate. If we go through and look at any of these others, like a multiply, it's the same thing. Input 1, input 2. We can add a few more values here. Like if we want to add 5 numbers together, we can click on this and add 3 more inputs. If we want to multiply 4 things together, we can click on this and add 2 more things to them. We have a place to put the output. We define the data type. So once you know how to use one of these, no kidding, you really do know how to use them all. And if there's one more thing that I'll show you, you see over here in the instructions, some of these look like blocks instead of normal ladder instructions. I'll go ahead and show you one of these. These basically work the same exact way. So I'm going to pull in this minimum. And what this does is it just basically pulls out the minimum between however many values you put in here. So I'm just going to use val1 and say val3 coming into there. And maybe I'll go ahead and add one more value to that, and I'll put val2 in there as well, just for fun. Okay, so we've got val1, 2, and 3, and we'll store that out as val5. And right click, define tag as a local int. Okay, good. And that automatically set its own data type. So here we've got 3 different instructions. That's a pretty good cross section of these math operators. As long as you have one simple function and the calculate block, you're going to be able to figure out the rest.